good? You're good. Yes. All right. Bye.
Thank you to everyone watching and each commissioner for your time. As we shared our visions for the last committee meeting, themes such as innovation, uplifting grassroots organization and supporting those initiatives, as well as addressing systematic barriers. Hopefully as a committee, we continue to move in our shared purpose and vision, even in disagreements. It is our hope that we continue to take our lessons in stride, as well as differences in receiving constructive criticism and working for collaboration and discovery of solutions. The meeting will be called to order at 6:03 p.m. And I will conduct a roll call. Commissioner John Adams.
Present.
Commissioner Alana Garrett-Ferguson.
Here on the phone.
Commissioner Kate Kennedy.
Present.
Commissioner Pete Van Leer.
Present.
Commissioner Adriana Rodriguez. Present. Commissioner Terry Wong.
Present.
Commissioner Ms. Zaid.
Present.
Quorum of the commissioners needed to perform business has been met. The next item of business is to discuss our grant guidelines. Basically, it was just a quick overview that we are all stewards of the Budget and Grant Committee, and we have a responsibility of maintaining the space. I believe that the guidelines will help improve team processes so that we can move business along. The item was sent a week ago, so hopefully you had time to review it. Ideally, we would just keep these items in mind of ensuring that we give each other space, that we're offering constructive solutions, as well as just being courteous, respectful in our conversation. The next item of business is to discuss our grant making and management. The first item to discuss is eligibility. I know that the idea was proposed, so I'm interested to see everyone's ideas so that hopefully we can combine into something, a collaborative document. Is there anybody that would like to start? Commissioner Kennedy.
I just want to clarify, Chair, are the things that were emailed to you, were they combined somewhere? Are they memorialized in this document?
I have your suggestions, but very few commissioners emailed me all their items. So I think that we can have just general discussions, and then we can see which items that we would like to put in a big document.
Okay.
So I guess I can start with my suggestion. If there's nobody else, would you like to share?
No.
So on my document for eligibility, I placed the following items: that all proposals are to be completed within the Cleveland proper, and I'm pretty sure we can find something defined within that geographic region. That the Cleveland Police Commission will consider grant requests from nonprofit organizations that are recognized by the IRS code. I think that's pretty. Is there any discussion around that point? See, grassroots organizations with an established fiscal agent. Fiscal agents must sign a letter of agreement and attach with the grant submissions. Commissioner Kennedy?
Just a suggestion, Chair, that B and C be combined, and that it should be Cleveland Police Commission will consider grant requests from nonprofit organizations that are recognized by the IRS or organizations with an established fiscal agent. Because if you're your own nonprofit, then you don't need a fiscal agent. So it's one or the other.
Right.
Okay.
I do think what she means is that you have to for it to be a nonprofit, you have to be recognized by the IRS.
So I mean, 2 points. So for the nonprofit, they will be independent and they have their own IRS. But technically, there should be a checks and balances. And if you're grassroots, normally you go through a fiscal agent. So that's a nonprofit that may be working with you so that you can work and oversee funds, basically.
But the point I'm making is that it's usually one or the other.
Mhm.
It's not, you're either a registered nonprofit with the IRS or you have a fiscal agent. That is a registered nonprofit.
Mhm, mhm,
I just wanted to make that clear.
mhm.
Yeah,
Commissioner
because
Sykes?
I think the issue is what you're saying is like, people might see this and think it has to be B and C
Okay,
versus one or the other.
Exactly, thank you.
four, okay.
I would, to the chair, yeah, that echoes like, edit I suggested as well, like to combine those as it were, so I agree with that.
Okay,
One or-
Commissioner.
are you designating all 501c3, C4s? Like, are you?
So that's open for discussion. Typically, I know of 501c3s, but, so I
Yeah,
don't
I
know.
would, to the chair, I would recommend we stick with 501c3s, given the priority funding areas. I don't see where a C4 would have a role there.
I think Commissioner Zaid.
I was just gonna say, and we can, assign the task of our staff to look at what other, government departments are doing in this realm that are already giving out grants, so we could just follow the city's guidelines for that.
Yeah. Commissioner Kennedy?
To the chair, C4 organizations are allowed to do political activities, and that is something we should stay away from. So we should not, I recommend we not fund C4 organizations.
Okay, so it seems like, we're
But I
Well,
think
okay.
we should spell this out.
with
you know?
50C3s as
501c3s.
well as the fiscal agent. I think we're in agreement with those grassroots. I know I did receive a suggestion of up to 10%. So it depends on the agency. Most fiscal agents are very, they're willing to work, but I do know some that do provide a charge. And I just wanted to provide, like, this may be a possibility and this may be a cost to include within the possible grant.
To the chair, maybe one more clarifying is many organizations can be grassroots and still have IRS status. So
Okay,
maybe just spells that might be confusing. Just that those without, organizations without
50.
501c3 status can go through an established fiscal agent.
Okay. Okay, that sounds good.
So
It seems like we're in agreement with that, so let's go to point D. Demonstrates a good faith in establishing partnerships with existing programs, key stakeholders, or organizations within a community. Lead agency submitting the grant cannot create conflicts of interest for the commission. If this occurs, must work with the legal staff to create a plan to rectify the issue. The purpose of this was to encourage partnerships, and I know we really talked about the grassroots organizations doing the work, and then hopefully this will create those dynamics to where they're working together and building that capacity, right? Because sometimes grassroots organizations may not have maybe as much staff or a variety of different resources, and then hopefully they work to get together where grassroots organizations typically have knowledge of the community, more in-depth understanding because they work with people more on occasions. Not saying that nonprofits though, but they're more hands-on, feet to the ground. Commissioner Pete?
Yeah, to the chair, one of my original thoughts there was to, I put in some language talking about, demonstrating an established record of partnerships with existing programs, stakeholders, organizations within the community, or especially since we're looking at some grassroots groups that may not be as established, perhaps saying, with or clear plans to establish such partnerships, so that we're not just saying, if you haven't been in business for like 10 years and you've got all this track record to point to, we do, it sounds like, want to provide opportunities for newer organizations that may not be able to say, I've been working in this group for 10 years or whatever. So I would suggest possibly saying, or clear plans to create those partnerships.
Okay.
Just a thought, it doesn't have to be that.
Yeah, that sounds good.
And I would also suggest breaking those two up, the conflict into a separate bullet, or a separate letter. And
Okay.
It seems like here you're saying, there can't be conflicts of interest for the commission, which I think is a very good point, but it seems like almost a different issue.
Okay.
So it's just splitting that into points D and E perhaps.
That sounds good. E. Okay, so the last point was the Cleveland Police Commission cannot fund projects already underway or projects that have been completed. Please submit your request well in advance of your project start date. Commissioner Kennedy.
So I just want to clarify that is there a consensus that we only want to fund new projects? That's my first question. We definitely don't want to fund projects that have been completed, of course, but sometimes organizations need project funding, but sometimes they need general operating support. So like people doing the work can get paid. And I just wonder about putting those types of project limitations on our grantees. I'd rather than have the flexibility to spend the money where they need to spend money.
So I think those are points of discussions. So I put this because that's typically what I see, but we can definitely have conversation if this is not something that we feel that is feasible. We can take this out. But I think typically why they do this is because we want to ensure that the timeline is implemented and that we have room for that. And organizations are giving us that courtesy. That's how I understand it, but I think it can be, it's negotiable. Commissioner Pete?
Yeah, to the chair, that was one of my questions. I kind of agree with Commissioner Kennedy that we should discuss that at least, and I would be open to maybe having a preference for newer projects, but also considering projects that already have established if they fit our criteria.
such rigid language.
Perhaps.
Okay. Commissioner Kennedy?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Van Leer. So I agree that a lot of the time the parameters are new projects, but from the nonprofit perspective, that's something that's problematic. And that's something that nonprofit people talk about a lot. And so I find it to be problematic, and I would rather us not perpetuate that, but I'm definitely interested in seeing what everyone has to say.
Commissioner Gary Ferguson, I know that you're on the phone. Is there anything that you would like to state?
I would just want to add, and I didn't know if they were going to this point, about us making, maybe it'll be helpful if we have a rubric and had these different things under, and they can be part of the scoring process to see who we give grants to. So a community project that maybe has already undergone might have a lower scoring, a rating consistent on that rubric, than one that is already established. And then I was also thinking of us having something in here about program outcomes or organizational outcomes, because I think something we run into in Cleveland is nonprofits getting large sums of money and not having a track record of how they've been able to manage it. So making sure that they have that system set up, but that if they don't, we also maybe have resources available to those organizations that don't. But I was thinking if we had a rubric, that might help.
Okay. Commissioner Wong?
I think the rubric is a great idea. However, we need to be very careful as to how the rubric is scored. Because I would hate for something that is new just to be, because it's new, to be scored higher. It should be about the quality of the, and I would hate for something that has been going on for a while and maybe needs an infusion of cash, of grant money to take it to the next level, for that to be counted against the organization. Mm-hmm. So I think maybe the solution is to broaden this language and then say that we will be developing a rubric with we can even say this number of grants for new organization or new projects, this number of grants and the types. We can figure out the numbers later because it's pretty complex and a lot of people probably spend a lot of time. The best projects are probably sustainable and constant. So, but if there's new, how do we determine new? Is it a new innovation that they, because it's not very clear cut. So I agree with that. Does anybody want to suggest any language to fix that?
Commissioner Zaid?
I would say maybe just take that part out about projects already underway and just leave it to projects that have already been completed. I mean, do you feel, I don't see a need to even, because like you said, like, what does that even mean?
Commissioner Adam?
To the chair. So if we take out the part about projects that have already been completed, it would just be a matter of how we design the rubric. So we could. You said we don't want to fund projects that I've already. I'm saying if we eliminate the part about projects that are already underway, and just say we don't want to fund projects that have already been completed, that leaves us with the broadness that I think a lot of us want to be open, and then it would just, I think, depend on the categories that we want to score organizations with the rubric. So then it would be, I think, dependent upon like a really good rubric. And to Commissioner Gary Ferguson's point, if we create a good rubric, then we should be able to eliminate the organizations that maybe we don't want to fund, if that makes any sense.
Oh, well, I'm just gonna say, but for the rubric, I think that's for a later discussion, and I want to ensure that we get through all the points of eligibility. So I'm gonna ask if we table that conversation. Commissioner Kennedy.
So in my email, I put suggestions like that I think grants should be allowed for capacity building, project support, innovative projects. So like by innovation, sometimes kind of experimental, like something that hasn't been done before, general operating support. I'm totally fine with just kind of leaving it as we don't want to fund projects that are completed. However, it's very likely that grantees will reach out and clarify, like, I need general operating support. Am I allowed to do that? So that's just something to keep in mind, that if we do release this without that specification, that we could get a lot of questions in response.
Okay, so I'm gonna highlight two key points because I know you sent the email. One was about like 500K for like a limit of the organizations. So I don't know if you want to explain that a little bit more in depth.
Thank you, Chair. So my suggestions were, we'd already talked about the fiscal sponsorship. I'd be interested if anyone thinks that we should limit the organization's like annual budgets that we fund. Like, should the organizations have an annual budget of less than like 500K? I don't know. I don't know but that's pretty common for there to be like a sort of cap when you kind of want to focus your energy on grassroots organizations. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention was just making sure that the charter language about the 3 program focus areas are in these guidelines, because that's really our North Star on what we want to focus on.
I placed it in the priority areas just so you're aware. Commissioner Adam. Okay. Executive Director.
To the chair, addressing the commissioner's point about the charter language. The charter language is clear that we'll get a legal read on this, but it looks like you can only give to these 3 areas. It says grants go to these 3 areas. And the first 2 are fine. The last one has another component to it, because mediation programs, if you just leave it that way, is very broad. The language, I think, says mediation programs specific to having an impact on policing or something along those lines. I'll pull it up, but you do need to add that to it so that people are clear. There's a lot of different kinds of mediation programs out there.
Thank you, Jason.
Okay. Ms. Biggerstaff, you do have something?
No, the only thing I'm gonna go along to what Jason was saying, that you have to, I was a board president of a nonprofit for 12 years. And we got money from the city of Cleveland to fund to pay our rent. And then we had to show them census tracts that different programs that we had was affected within the community. And what we had to do, other councilmen back then, it was Bill Patton and Craig Willis. So if their constituents came into our area to get services, they had to give money. That's how we did. But at the end of the day, I'm gonna just keep saying this, I'm gonna drill it. You have to understand the nonprofit law. You have to understand the grants. You have to understand the grants through the law. So that lawyer, like you need a lawyer on staff. You also may want to have a lawyer come in that deals with nonprofits and a lawyer that talks about grants. So you will know what you're doing when you do it, because remember, it's going to come back on you. You have to make sure that you are giving the money to the right agency that's going to do the right thing and follow the guidelines.
Thank you. I think those are excellent points. And just so we know that this is a draft, and I'm pretty sure that we'll have several meetings, and definitely to ensure that we're crossing our T's and dotting our I's. I'm sorry, I didn't see who was first. Commissioner Wong?
If these are the three areas, I think violence prevention and the mediation program with the impact on policing is fairly clear. Restorative justice seems very broad to me. It can have very different meanings. So I would propose that we provide some more, because it could be restorative justice in an economic sense. Is it like, because is it mediation, restorative justice? So I don't know if Mr. Goodrick has more clarity on what restorative justice means here.
So what I would say is that I definitely think that we will provide those clarifications. I'm going to bring us back to eligibility because we're on a time, and I know that we stated about staff and things like that. So we want to ensure that we're focused and really hitting our marks. But we'll definitely answer those questions. Okay.
So
Okay. Is there
a question on those areas. It just seems that should be one of the top eligibility things, that they meet those criteria. I think we should incorporate that. That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah. Only, right?
The top one.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So you guys want this set up in the background in eligibility?
I think so, yeah.
It has to be.
Okay.
Here we can only fund these.
Okay, because I've seen it like priority areas, so I see that as okay. But if everybody else don't see it like that, that means we need some clarification, right? Okay.
The charter's pretty clear that it's only those three areas that we can fund with the grants. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll move that.
Should
Okay.
say meet the criteria established under section 115.5.
Okay.
The director has it.
I can read the specific. So making grants to community-based violence prevention, restorative justice, and mediation programs to reduce the need for police activity. So that's the second part of the mediation. The other thing I would recommend is that if you do this, tie it to your mission. So the grants have to fit the goals of the CPC. So restorative justice related to the goals of the CPC, and even better, if the programs you fund can help bring deliverables back that help the consent decree or move police policy forward, you get a double win out of that.
Okay.
So keep that in mind too, that if their mission crosses with the mission of restorative justice, also helping policing increase and move the consent decree forward, that's even a better win out of this. So something to consider is how you can maximize the value towards your mission as well, because you're funding to achieve these goals, but you're also funding to help your mission impact the world.
That sounds good. Commissioner Pete?
Yeah, all right, I'm looking for that in the law right here, but I guess I read that as like that last piece to reduce police was for all three of those, but because it's depending on how you read it, the way I read it was like it applied to all three, that the whole thing is about reducing the need for police, whatever. So
Okay,
I would say that's how I read it initially, but
okay.
these things are always, not as clear as you would like them to be.
So I had another submission for grant eligibility with one grant submission per cycle for the organization or nonprofit, was the grassroots organization. Is that something that we feel comfortable with, that they cannot submit multiple submissions?
Oh, in a cycle?
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm. Okay. Is there any other, Commissioner Zaid, or, okay?
we still looking at the eligibility?
Yep. So the top part, so, the edits of meeting the criteria under 115, as well as the one grant submission per cycle will be added. I do not believe we received clarification about the 500K.
Oh, thank you, yeah.
Because I did write that down. Is that something that we are in agreement with, or is there any opposition? I guess my own concern is how
If I
will
may.
we monitor that? Commissioner Garrett Ferguson?
Sorry, I didn't know how else to get you guys to think that. I just wanted to say I'm in support of capping it at 500,000 to make sure that it goes to grassroots. And for the comment about restorative justice, because we knew that can be interpreted many ways, the training committee is coming up with people to train us on that. So by the time, hopefully, we will get we do the grant, all of the commission will know like the different aspects of restorative transformative justice, because we did include that in our training. But I also support the 500K.
Commissioner Adams?
To the chair, I just, on Commissioner Garrett Ferguson's point, I was gonna suggest, I think the 500K, I would be okay with that. But I also wanna just throw out there, do we wanna have some language where we only wanna fund maybe a certain percentage of an organization's operating budget? Do we wanna go there? Because then if we have the 500K, but then we only fund a certain percentage of an organization, that might give us a little bit more flexibility. And it would also help us with organizations that we were talking about earlier, that they may need, they may just need to like pay their staff, or they just may need some different costs. But if we put some language in there like that, it may just give us like the flexibility and, to do what we're trying to do, which is the right thing.
Commissioner Kennedy?
Yeah, I'd be interested to like see what other funders do in that space in terms of percentage, because I totally understand what you're saying. And also we could talk about other numbers too. I'm totally open to that. But my rationale for suggesting it is just to not stay away from funding, organizations that are in the millions of dollars and that have like dedicated grant writers, and that we allocate these funds to the people who really need it, to the organizations that are outlined in the charter.
Commissioner Wong?
So theoretically, I'm fine with that barrier. I'm just a little, if we can get some clarity, because it sounds like a very nice round number. I don't know what that means in the organization, what types of organizations. So maybe we need to refine that number more, because it sounds like it's a medium size, so then they're still gonna have more resources than the small, right? So if we, but if we can look at that number, maybe one solution is that we just divvy up the grants according to operating budget.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to 500,000. I part of me is thinking, well, do we want to have that as like a top priority, but give us ourselves some flexibility? But I'm okay with, if the consensus of the group is that we're going to do, I'm fine with that. But I also wonder about, do we want to keep it open this first round? We can always change it next time. So I'm not opposed.
I'm open to that too. Also, to Commissioner Wong's point, so most of the applications I see, you're exactly right. The medium orgs are like around that 500K mark. And then if a funder really wants to focus on a small org, they usually cap at like 250K. So just to kind of give you an idea of like what that landscape is in terms of what funders see as small, medium, large, etc.
Okay, so maybe we could just make it part of the rubric that there could be, or we can then, I think leaving it open is good, right? If we just have we have obviously mindfulness to go towards, not just, but we also don't want to just fund small, right? Or just fund new, like in the sense of like, I don't think necessarily something that has a lot of technology necessarily it will be innovative. It's about impact too and potential.
So I'm
impact.
hearing that maybe we could put this on the rubric, and we sound in agreement with that. And that can help us be intentional about really ensuring that we're getting to small, medium, and maybe large, right? Okay. So the next item of business is typically when you see like guidelines, they say who they do not fund. So I put individual, for-profit, commercial organizations. fundraising, endowments, membership drives, lobbying. There may be some questions about this. Funding shortfalls, organization, general expenses, or capital projects. That's just what I've seen around. Commissioner Pete had his hand up first.
Yeah, no, the only thing I think we've talked about before is this general expenses or operating expenses. I think there's a question there. I didn't have any questions about the rest of it.
Okay, so, Commissioner Kennedy?
I totally agree on fundraising shortfalls and capital projects, but I do think that we should be open to funding general operating budgets, especially for smaller organizations. Because part of the problem in like the fundraising space is that funders don't want to fund general operating expenses, and general operating expenses is your staff, right? Like it's their payroll.
So it can complete the project.
Yeah. I mean, and keep the organization sustainable. I think it's a real point of frustration. So I'm really in support of funding general operating
So
support.
would you, and I think Commissioner Adams pointed, is there a percentage that we should, do we want the majority of the grants to be the project and really go into the community? Or should we, or you just want to keep that unrestricted?
More than that.
Sorry.
To the chair, I'm sure this is a given, but just because the public's listening, because it's taxpayer money, we'll have to add some legal language to this of what is absolutely prohibited that governments cannot fund. I think you already mentioned political activity, like that's a given. So there are other things too. We'll get a very specific read from law to make sure that we're very clear what taxpayer money can't fund.
Okay. So from your experience, are they able, because I know Ms. Biggerstaff mentioned it about general operating expenses. Just from my research, most of them do not, so that's why I placed that there. But maybe we can just table this topic until we get more like direct.
And to the chair, I've never seen it prohibited by law that they can't fund operating expenses, but we can also look at other government grant eligibility guidelines and just check them against this to make sure we're not missing anything.
Okay. Sounds good. Commissioner Wong?
I do want to bring up one point, and I don't know if it's illegal, it's already answered by the law. I mean, we had spoken about individuals, and what do we do about individuals that are able to get a fiscal sponsor? So is that not allowed?
So from my understanding, it's not that we can't fund individuals, but that may be something we need more clarification on.
With fiscal sponsorship, obviously, yeah.
So an individual could technically get a fiscal sponsor and name an organization and just be one person.
But they need an organization.
But they need a fiscal sponsor. Or I'm sorry, fiscal agent. Sorry, I keep using fiscal sponsor. Yeah, they need a fiscal agent. But it could just be one person.
As
But
an organization.
No, they don't have to have any,
So-
they don't have to have any status. They
so-
get the status through.
all they would have to do is sign an agreement with a fiscal agent and like call their organization something. So it could be one person, but they have like the legitimacy through the fiscal.
Supervision.
Yeah, the supervision, exactly. So usually, a lot of fiscals, for example, don't let the like staff touch the money. Like they do all the accounting, they do all of the tax work. So there's a lot of oversight there.
So maybe this can be something that we explore along with the organization general expenses, because again, we may be considered government contracts, so that may be a whole different arena. Commissioner Adams?
To the chair, my recommendation would be to let the law lead us on what we're going to prohibit, because we are in Cleveland, Ohio, and there's a lot of needs in different communities throughout the city. And I just think that the most important thing is that we are in compliance with the law. I would like to leave this grant process as open as possible to people of the community, because there are individuals in the community who are doing really good work. I know that we met and you told me about a program that an individual is running that is actually having a good impact on the community. And I would I would really hate it if we created a grant process that would not allow that individual to be able to apply. So I would suggest again that whatever we are not going to do, that is driven by what we are legally able to do and not do, because I really want to be able to award, like I said, innovation and just things that are having a real impact on the community. And I wouldn't want an individual to be excluded on a technicality.
Commissioner Wong.
Yeah, so my understanding, is that if they can get that civic society, they could even, I know that there are, larger grant organizations that will even find, partner and sponsor. So it's also about getting these ideas. Say we get an individual, grant that is not necessarily ready. Perhaps we can facilitate a matchmaking with an organization that can help them be ready in the next cycle. So we don't want to stop the flow. It's not even about like innovative ideas. I think those are the people most close to what is happening. And I truly believe the community has solutions for themselves. And if we can be able to support that.
Commissioner Kennedy.
I totally agree with Commissioners Wong and Adams. Just to give you kind of like a real life example of exactly what you're saying. So a month ago, I had a mentor of mine connect me with someone with a really good idea that didn't have any nonprofit status or fiscal agent. I made a phone call. They signed the contract, fiscal agent. Boom. One person got that done in one meeting. So that's something that we could definitely support with.
So that sounds good. Is there any other suggestions or comments?
To share about the criteria in general.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is really nitpicky, but I think in one place it just talks about the Cleveland Police Commission, and it should really have the correct name, Cleveland Community Police Commission. Just make sure we do that right.
Okay, so the next item of business is program goals for the year.
One other question. So what's the process for this? Are you gonna create a document that incorporates what we've discussed, and then looking at other, whatever else we need, and then send it back to the committee so we can talk about our next meeting? Is that the plan?
So we're still working through the logistics. So that's what I see, but it really depends on when I receive an answer from law too, because I'm not sure if I will have to incorporate that too. So we're kind of going with the flow, but that is my
That's
hope,
the intent.
to include all of the recommendations, and then
Great. Okay. Just want to.
Commissioner Zaid.
Oh, no, I was just gonna speak to that we need to hear what that ruling is from the city's law department. And also we can definitely have our staff work on, framing and drafting our guidelines to have ready for the next meeting.
So I put that under old business. So we're definitely, but it's not really an update.
Just real quick, and this is more so for the public, can we just state, when we say we're waiting to hear back from the law department, can we just put that out for the public, because we're speaking amongst ourselves, but the public may not know what decision we're waiting for from the law department?
I mean, we can, if you want to move it right now, but it's on the agenda.
I just want to make sure the public.
So I just had a clarifying question. I noticed that Ms. Goodrich had sent out an email. There's a grant making training. Is people that are on the training committee, what would that entail? And would that have a hopefully positive impact on our work here? If you guys know what that involves. Within a few weeks, I believe.
So I believe that training is March 15th. I'm not actually on the committee, so I can't tell you up to date, but I believe that it will provide more in-depth information, and that we can bring that information and definitely allow more details. So this document is not final. It's not gonna be, it's a working draft. Commissioner Light.
Jason, have you found someone to lead that class?
To the chair, confirming the date that the internal training committee did discuss is the 15th. It'll be just probably around an hour of training. And the goal is, one, we hopefully will have, to Dr. Adams' point, there is a question before the law department right now about council's involvement in our grant making process. So hopefully we will have that legal ruling back before the 15th. So then whatever attorney worked on that will come present the legal ruling on that. And then also there is in the city's Department of Finance someone who is the overall kind of guru of grants for the city. And so we're hoping that they'll be available. We have reached out and we're trying to facilitate that to just come and give you general rules of the road for taxpayer grant making. So.
Sounds good. So I guess we'll proceed with program goals for the year. So if we have any suggestions, we can feel free. I just placed 2 items. One was for capacity building for grant initiatives. I know that during our last meeting, we really wanted to ensure that grassroots initiatives had capacity to apply. So typically to build relationship with local nonprofits and aims to create a network of fiscal agents that grassroots can utilize in the grant making process. Commissioner Wong had brought up about the grant seeker workshop, and then maybe some support with grant evaluation. I think these are long-term goals. It's not going to be something immediate. Commissioner Kennedy?
So for a third possible goal, I wanted to recommend something to the effect of prioritizing those closest to the challenges we want to address or something to that effect. And just being thoughtful about like listing those communities that are most proximate to the problem.
I agree, Commissioner Kennedy, and I was thinking that not to like exclude any communities, we could just maybe consider things like communities that are prone to violence in areas that are most affected by poverty, and if we consider that, those areas would be automatically considered if we use those guidelines.
So you said poverty.
Yeah, areas prone to violence, like increased areas like violence areas, and then also areas affected the most by poverty.
Okay. And then to create awareness within the greater Cleveland community regarding the grant, and to ensure that potential grantees understand the mission and priorities, to create an outreach plan that identifies, key stakeholders, nonprofit, grassroots, to ensure fair distribution of information and documents, basically. Commissioner Wong?
So I agree with Commissioner Zaid's point. I just do wonder, without looking at the stats, what level of police interaction, what the relationship with class is. Is it just impoverished areas? Are there working class areas? We don't know exactly the relationships. I would say like a combination of those things, not just violence, but police interactions that have whatever the metric they gave, right? How many police officers are assigned to those districts because of the metrics that they spoke about the violence. Is it with the felonies? Was it the number of felonies and domestic violence and things like that? That could be another measure of police interaction with the community. A police number of calls. We could probably develop multiple, because those would number of calls, number where they have traffic stops, like things like that, things that would map directly to police interactions. I think would be interesting to look at, because we're trying to like work on the class in relation to the police, and have an impact on the police, right? So.
Is there any other comments? So is this a separate comment or is this under the outreach? We think we should like eliminate this or put this as like a second bullet,
Maybe you make it another,
a separate, like this for 3?
maybe a separate third area,
Okay.
Like target,
Commissioner, Alana Garrett Ferguson.
Yes, so I think that what everyone said makes sense. I would just want to make sure if we're talking about just different populations of people, kind of piggyback off of what Commissioner Wong said, that we look at data and see if we could get data to justify why we're prioritizing certain areas, or maybe when we create the rubric, maybe that's something we can specify on there, or we're letting people know about the grants that, hey, we'll prioritize grantees that have projects that hit these target areas or these target communities and populations of people. I think we can also play around with language to make it so that people know exactly what our focus is.
Commissioner Kennedy.
To the chair, I wanted to see if you had any feedback about this idea. And also, Mr. Goodrick. So could we possibly ask some of the staff to do either something in GIS or with US Census data where we could see census tracts and overlay some of the calls, so we could just get a sense of what things are looking like and what communities kind of take it from there?
To the chair, I'm sure you can see Mr. Ryan Walker here getting all excited. This
Yeah.
is what he does. This is his area.
Yeah.
Yes, so the city has, the mayor's administration is dramatically increasing the use of data at City Hall as well. And they have all those wonderful tools as well as ours. So any data you ask for or can conceive, I think we have a good chance to get. So,
This is a dream. Thank you.
I do want to note though with the census data, and I'm sure there's ways around it, Ryan, that unless it's the long form, the class element is not usually taken. Right?
It is.
Right. Not in the short form, like in the long.
Do you mean the
form.
ACS or the decennial?
I've done the census and mostly it just asks, how many kids you have, what race you
So
have.
for the there's the ACS 1-year survey, ACS 5-year survey, and ACS 10-year survey, which is the decennial census. So on each survey, so if you go to census.gov right now, you can look up median household income and you can look up how many people in a given region make what amount of money. So you absolutely can look up the class numbers very much in detail.
Okay.
So
Are we good? Ron can clarify.
Right.
please, I'm sorry. I was
To the chair, income data is available down to the census block group level for income data. I'm sorry, I couldn't.
That's what I said. Did I not say that?
I don't know. I'm sorry.
I just
Yeah,
gave you
I
the tour of the census.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
Yeah,
No,
to the chair, another point is there is so much research that is based on Cleveland, its education levels, where people live, what their income is, that it's not just the census. There's so many other orgs that have had layered data on top of that we can probably get for you. So
One other point, I guess it's just how granular it is, right? Because from the county
To the block.
to the block. But I'm concerned, we both, I believe, live in Tremont. There are vast differences if you cross one street because it's one part of it's being gentrified. So I don't know if the income of a high earner will cover the income of a lower earning. There she is.
So you could track it either via the median or you can break it down by income level, right? So 100K and above, and then usually it's between 10 and 20,000 are the rest of the groups. So you can kind of look at the average, but then you can also look granularly. There's also census data on gentrification specifically.
okay. Commissioner Adams.
To the chair, I would just want to add, I think census data is useful. I would want us to not just look at class. There's clearly going to be intersections with race and other categories. And I, as someone who works in education, I would want some data on, we probably get this from the census too, but I would care about how many children are in that community, right? Because I feel as if one of our goals is we want to do this restorative justice model, which is going to affect some children, and also clearly a lot of adults. But I do think that for me, I'm passionate about children and making sure that whatever programs that we are going to fund, to me, it wouldn't matter if they were going to affect the youth, because I think if we can provide more support for young people, I think that would be beneficial to the city.
Commissioner Zaid.
I was gonna say, and that's why I was gonna suggest that maybe we can invite some of these grassroots organizations to our committee meetings so they can just, address and inform us of the work that they're doing in these particular areas. And maybe so we can understand what they're doing, and also we can hear what their needs are and who are the people that they serve.
Commissioner Kennedy.
Totally agree, Commissioner Zayed. And to your point, Dr. Commissioner Adams, the census now has data down to like the nursery school level, so you can know how many children in your area are in nursery school, and then all the above grades. So that's totally something we can do.
Commissioner Wong.
Right, and we also don't want to forget other groups like maybe the elderly that are also impacted. But to Commissioner Adams' point, I physically did the census, and I know that there were issues in this past one in undercounting. And often it was like somebody would just count the number of people in the household, but you don't know the ages of them. So I agree with his point that we cannot be solely reliant on I'm sure Brian will give us a multivariate analysis of all these issues intersectionally. So let's look at multiple data sets. I guess that's what I'm saying.
Totally. So some options are the ACS 5-year, which from 2015 to 2020, which would give you not just the 2020 census that was undercounted. So that's an option. But I totally agree with you 100%. Not all the data that we're looking for anyway is in the census.
Okay, so I'm so glad that we're motivated about the census. I know your task, and when that comes out, it's on you soon, okay? And be a team. So our Commissioner Garrett Ferguson, do you have anything you would like to add to go?
No, I think everything has been said on this point. Thank you.
Okay, since there's no further additions, we're going to move to funding levels for our next item of business. Just place something down. Grants typically range between 10,000 and 70,000. That number can be edited. Just do something there. In some limited cases, we may fund larger grants, but typically it's after we've gotten to know your organization over a period of time. I just put we typically don't make multi-year grants, and I just placed that because the commission, especially this committee, I'm not sure of the sustainability, and hopefully we start out with a fresh pot of money, and they're not tied to the grant decisions of this committee. If there's any changes, hopefully it is stable, but although we may fund the same organization on a year-to-year basis, but I did put some flexibility in that, but I put both options, but it's up to the pleasure of the committee.
So it seems like, do we want to talk about the ranges?
Mm-hmm.
The lower end, I think, might be easier. I think Kay and I are on the same page. We have one model for this, the Neighborhood Connections Grant. Usually, it's a starter grant, $5,000. A smaller grant would give us the ability to help a lot and to see. And then also, it will be an experiment in our interactions with these organizations that would increase our number of grants. The 70,000 just seems like I'm not sure. Where was this? Were these numbers?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I just
So I think that maybe a smaller, because 10,000, you can do a lot with 5,000, I think, but then I would say if it's a 5,000 grant, we want to move them maybe into a multi-year project. So it just from a sustainability standpoint, I think if someone's doing well, we want to keep funding them, right? So
Commissioner Zai.
I'm just throwing a question out there. This year, since we're only having one cycle and, we're new and there might be some staffing limitations, could we just maybe offer different amounts this year and maybe like larger grants?
As we
And then next year, maybe explore like the smaller, more individual.
So I just wanted a clarification. So are you asking that we do not give like small grassroots grants?
No.
Or you saying the 5,000?
Grassroots organizations, but just give larger grants to those organizations. Maybe, so it won't be, because that's a lot of grants. $5,000 grants is,
Yeah, that's how I was thinking too.
So maybe work with the staff to see what's their capacity.
Commissioner Zaid, and then they wanna.
After whatever.
Commissioner Kennedy.
You looked at me. You looked at me, so I know you did.
Oh, okay, Commissioner.
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Zaid in that I'm definitely like worried about like how many $5,000 grants the staff would be overseeing. But then at the same time, 70,000 is kind of a lot at one time. So that, I don't know, I have like I'm feeling a little hesitation at that number. I put down 50, 5 to 50 as a range. And if, to address the sustainability point, Commissioner Wong, I think that we should, I think it's already in here that orgs can reapply so we could support sustainability.
So with the 70,000, I was thinking about the bigger organizations probably will apply for like that amount. Because we did say that you're a nonprofit, and they probably have more capacity. Executive Director, I don't know if you want to comment.
Well, you guys are, this is a working group and I love it. So I just want to say that, you have to also think about your load too. So, you're the ones that I think under the law, of course, we can help you sort them and screen them however you like, but you guys are the ones that have to go through the applications and rate these things. So that's a huge time commitment there. So, if you narrow it, you'll probably get less, applications that you have to go through. So it's not just our workload, it's yours. And whatever you guys come up with, we'll make it work, I think. But the other question is the impact, right?
Yeah.
So, you're saying we want deliverable goals. How much can you realistically impact in this space with $5,000? So, if you're saying we want to see you accomplish something and have measurable program objectives, $5,000 isn't really realistic to do much in this town and make an impact in any one of these areas.
I think it was Commissioner Wong. And
Yeah.
then Commissioner
Okay, the 5,000 is also if we really do want to have individuals be able to, I think it's a safe number. 10 seems quite a bit to me. I do think you can, one of the organizations that I used, was already doing human trafficking advocacy work by themselves. Their first grant was 5,000. It's just something to allow something to initiate. I think the range can be left large. We're not like saying that we have to give out a $70,000 grant, and it provides us some latitude. It's also possible if we find that the best projects are their smaller projects and we have leftover money, is there a way to, and we haven't, exhausted the 1 million, that we could still redistribute more money? Is that possible?
I'm sincerely hoping we exhaust the 1.2
Right, so we
million
can-
because leftover money, we still have an issue with that, but it
Right.
just looks like it's
Yeah.
going to go away. So, you might have some odd change left over because someone might have, it may not equal exactly the amount. So, but it should be like a couple dollars if you do it right.
And it's
So-
possible they could ask for something. We say, well, we would love your project, but we think you need a little bit more capacity. If we had something left, we can, those numbers are not set in stone, so.
So I'm wondering for just like we said with prior about the rubric, maybe individuals for us internally, maybe like 5,000, grassroots organization, like maybe 10,000, and then larger organizations, maybe like 50, it sounds like to 70,000, but that's for us, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think those are good ranges, but I would say there are varieties of grassroots organizations in different levels of maturity. So I think
So,
if we just give ourselves a range, then we can,
so you were wanting from
Popular.
5,000 to 70,000, just to,
yeah, I'm okay with the 70, but 50, so say 50,000 would be, yeah, so we can give out 5 of those and you'd be a quarter away done. So,
but
So
then you
it's
still
not
got
that much.
3/4.
I know, but you 3/4, it's not like hard. I think, I actually think that if we can not exhaust yourself, touch as many, then we can see what also works. It's a way for them to test out their ideas. And next year you can change your grant making numbers every year.
Commissioner
So-
Zaid?
I was just gonna say, when I spoke earlier, I had the impact and outcomes in mind. From what I see with working on the ground, that a lot of grassroots organizations are stunted and limited because of this type of thinking, like, oh, because there's grassroots, let's not give them a lot. But if they have the answers to solve some of these issues in those 3 categories, we need to support them as much as we can and not continue the same of some of these foundations and organizations that limit them.
So
based
what
on
would be a
their-
good number to start off with?
I think we should start high. I think, I'm sorry, Jason.
To the chair, if you do 70,000 as your cap and you gave 70 to everyone, that's 17 awards. So we don't even know if we're gonna get 17 applications. So I would say your high cap could be problematic.
Yeah.
Cause if there's that many organizations doing this in this space, and there may be, but you might want to consider bumping it up just so you don't hit that wall right there.
So what would you say is a good number?
I don't have a good perspective on
do a
that.
survey.
I'm just saying, I think 70 might be a little low based on the math I just did.
Maybe we just don't have one.
Can we ask Ms. Bickerstaff too? Yeah. She has any-
I don't think it should be 70,000.
Yeah.
I think it should be 25. It should be 25, not 70. Because you have to make sure
The
that
ceiling?
they're doing what they said they were
Yeah.
gonna do. When I was the board president of Informing Our Children, Bill Patton, who was the councilman at that time, would come out to look to see how we were doing our program, to make sure, remember that money is the taxpayers' money. And he was wanting to make sure that money was being spent wisely within that organization. So this is you guys' stuff. Who am I? I'm just saying, I think 25,000 should be the cap. 50 is too much, and I don't think you should keep giving it to the same people every year. Because that's gonna show favoritism.
Commissioner Adams?
I just wanted to say, as I'm listening to the conversation, I know that Commissioner Zaid and I had kind of talked about sort of ways of thinking about creating different kinds of grants that could be available to different types of people in the community. So I just wanted to throw out there that maybe, it's sort of like I was thinking about when we were looking at the salary ranges for like the executive director and the staff members. Like if we had a range, like a minimum amount and a maximum amount, we could award anything in between. We don't really know right now what the needs of these organizations are really going to be. And I do think that we should listen to Commissioner Zaid because she is on the ground with her community organization, and she does have insight into sort of the challenges that these organizations face. So just what people were talking about, like what if we thought about the type of grants that we want to give out, right? So maybe there's a starter grant, right? And then maybe there's like a certain range that we want to give out for starter grants. And then maybe there's something like a sustainability grant or something like that. And then maybe there's a range of funding that we can provide for existing organizations who have proven effectiveness, but maybe need some help, maybe with operational costs to sustain themselves. And then maybe there could be something like an expansion grant, right? Like an organization who has shown both effectiveness and sustainability, but maybe they want to expand a little bit. I just want to throw out there that I do think that there may be a different way to think about how we want to package the grants that we offer to sort of, again, allow ourselves to be able to meet the needs of the community and these organizations, like new organizations as well as existing organizations.
Any discussion on that point? Commissioner Peach?
Yeah, just going back to Commissioner Zayed, what you had said before, and I guess I don't have a strong position on like it should be this and this, but I do feel like we need to be flexible, especially in this first year, and not pigeonhole, like you have to do this or this, and this is a hard and fast cap. I think what Director Goodrick said about, $70,000 times 17, right? And it's like, who knows what we're going to get? I think if we can keep it flexible, we'll see what the demand is. What we want to say, well, you can only get this much, and then there's this really good proposal from a group that's going to ask for 75, and everything else fits except, oh, sorry, you're not going to get 75, even though you're going to show us exactly. So I feel like the more flexibility, especially in this first year, would help us learn what the demand is, what the interest is, what's out there to fund.
Commissioner Wong?
So, and that's the point that, I understand, and, and maybe we should look at whether that model with the neighborhood connections actually has impact. I just don't want someone to say and they think of like, it's their first time and they're applying and they think, oh, my idea is it'll be 5,000. Maybe they don't have, that there's a barrier for them to apply, that they think their idea is too small. But then I also, on the other hand, if you look at the big foundations, their grants and the amounts they give vary. They decide. They just have an amount to give and we can divvy up the number. So I don't think, I just want to encourage application. So those numbers may encourage application.
So it seems like
it's too low for.
We're gonna do Commissioner Adams' proposal, and then put some ranges on each level, is what I'm hearing. Okay. Should we do that now?
I'm sorry, what were the areas again?
To the chair, I just wrote down, I just write down stuff as we talk, but we had mentioned starter grants, and then we've talked a lot about sustainability, which I think is critical. Like, we don't want to fund things that are just like not sustainable for the community, and then maybe expansion. And if anyone felt like they want to get rid of one of those and add something, fine. But that's just what I just keep hearing as people are talking.
I realize we are going to be limited by those three, somewhat limited. So
You clarified the three.
the restorative justice, violence prevention, and mediation. Those are, I think, very clear. But there's at least some designation there. So we might not, again, to Mr. Goodrick's point, I think we should do as much as possible to encapsulate what everyone's saying, to encourage people to apply, to, whether it requires us go into the community, because there might be great ideas that people may not even put down on paper, because that's a big effort.
So do you guys want to eliminate this range? Should we just eliminate the sentence, or should we just
Maybe
say?
just eliminate the range and just open to.
Grants vary,
Very, okay,
and it can be used for X, Y, and Z, right, what he said.
okay, that's
But not
Without
limited
getting-
to.
But not limited to,
okay.
So then it gets an idea of what the amounts are.
Commissioner Garrett Ferguson?
Yes, I just wanted to say that we can do research, or staff can do this research, but there are programs out there that already have a cost benefit analysis for these different program areas that we can award grants to. So there's a medium cost that cities, organizations have paid for when it comes to violence prevention for youth, for example, between the ages of, 13 to 18. You can actually look that stuff up and get the average cost, and that will give us a ballpark figure. A lot of those programs are very youth specific, they're going to cost about $5,000 a year per pupil sometimes, or like I think it's like $500 per pupil, and then like $5,000 a year depending on. So that can kind of give us a range of how we should structure the grants. A lot of programs, $70,000 is not a lot of money if you're thinking of doing violence prevention type of program and what all that might entail. But if it's something maybe like restorative justice, where it's more like a peace circle model, then there's also cost benefit analysis of those type of programs and how much they cost. Sometimes those are not as interactive, or they don't have as much manpower. So that program might only cost $25,000. So it just depends. But different cities have already implemented a lot of these programs at different aspects. So that research is available. And so it might be a good idea to see if the staff will give us that. And so then we can come back, look over what's out there, what are other people charging, what are these analyses are saying, how is it comparable to a city like Cleveland, and then make a decision on the ranges for the grant.
Okay. Is there any further discussion on that? So that sounds like a to-do action item. That may influence our ability to determine like funding levels. Any further questions, comments, concerns? Okay, hence none. We're gonna move into old business. I'm not sure if we want to discuss further the project update. I said project budget update. I know we touched briefly about the city's what we're waiting for on law. I would strongly encourage that city council has a meeting on Monday, and if you want to advocate, I'm not sure if the request has already been submitted for public comment. I know there's a deadline, and I know you were thinking about speaking. So if you want to support, you're speaking as well?
Wednesday,
Wednesday.
it's already passed.
Oh, it's already
Yeah,
passed,
sure.
but you can continue to advocate.
Yeah, so definitely I'll be there on Monday if anyone wants to join me. I did submit a request for public comment. They were full at the time. So I guess just be mindful of that, but there's always future meetings too. So. Oh, and if anyone wants the public comment request form and the deadlines and stuff, just let me know. I'll send it to you.
So right now the budget is pending, and I decided we wanted to bring this forward because there is tentative that our budget may be cut, just so the public will know, as well as we're still waiting for the law department. And I know that was discussed prior, so do you have any questions about that?
Oh, no, I was trying to say the speaker staff.
Okay, Latanya from Black Lives Matter wanted to ask, what do you mean about starter grants? I think, who said that, Dr. Adams or Dr.
So I guess.
Someone talked about starter grants.
Well, I think
Commissioner Wong.
it's in the neighborhood connections model, it's someone who's never received a grant before, right? It's I think from the funding system. It's with the intention of, I think, of moving, because I think that's an arm of the Cleveland Foundation. I'm not exactly sure. It's with the intention of moving them up to higher grants. It's like a test.
Commissioner Adams?
Well, I think we can define it. I mean, I just think that this is something we could discuss and we could define what that means for our organization. But I would not be opposed to helping someone get a good program started. I think I would like to be open to that as well.
And I think the intent is so individuals can participate. And I hear you, Ms. Bickerstaff, about we're going to evaluate the outcomes every year. We're not just going to keep giving someone the same grant. But then to Mr. Goodrick's point, we also, this is, shall I say, an additional purpose that was given to the commission And our focus really is on a lot of the direct police related action.
And that's where I'm at. I'm just listening to you about the grants and just do my 2 cents in because I used to be a board president. My focus is police accountability, police misconduct, focusing on the consent decree and focusing on Charter 115.5. I can care less, I'm gonna be honest, about any of these grants. That's where my focus is at. And I hope your focus is there too.
Yeah, I think we are ensuring that we want to hold the police accountable, but we also want to be good stewards of tax dollars. So we have to wear multiple hats and ensure that we are accountable on both ends.
I don't have a problem with that. My only thing is the focus is, you know why you're here. You already know. The grants, that's fine, because remember, we created it. So we put that segment in there for you to have grants. But don't forget about people, also, the only people that was killed by police, unsolved murders. We talked about that big time when we did issue 24. So some of that monies could go, I believe, to, because the homicide said they only have 15 people and they need 30, 34, 35. You know.
So yeah, and that's what I was trying to.
And about 34, 35 detectives.
So I would propose, just from a staff point of view and Ms. Bickerstaff's statement, and she was involved in the framing of issue 24. I gathering that their intent was this was a supplemental thing that we can do to for long term for the community, but their immediate needs. So we want to make this process for us, because right now it seems like we don't have enough to do, right? But it may not be in the future. Ms. Bickerstaff, could you maybe explicate what the intention was for the grants in 24?
What happened was when we did issue 24, when we wrote it, we were the authors of it. Myself, Alicia Kirkman, Mario Rice, Jennifer from Surge and Cream Hinton. When we went out and did discussions in the community, conversations in the community, one of the big issues that we brought up, we run into families of surviving victims with unsolved murders. Unfortunately, about like your side, it's an unsolved murder. Am I correct?
Oh, no, they found the person.
They did find him. Okay, but they got for that.
Almost every other woman in my grief group haven't found it.
But see, this is what I'm saying. So we said, and I people come to me about solving murders, and I have to tell them I'm a private investigator. I investigate when a person is accused of a murder. We don't solve murders. That's for the law enforcement to do that.
It's a big issue.
It's a big issue, and people are calling me every day. And what I did talk to homicide on some of these issues. And the biggest issue, they don't have enough officers in homicide. They need 34, 35, I was told, and they only have 15. So I don't know if some of that money, some of that grants could go to that. I'm not for sure. I'm just putting it out there. Or maybe the commission could advocate to the city about getting more officers or promoting other officers to homicide. Maybe you can talk to them about their budget for the police. So this is a big problem with unsolved murders. Okay, I know who killed my brother, Raymond Chickens. He was a police officer. All of us who lost people with police violence, we know who our perpetrators are. It was the police. We know the police officer. We know who they are, the badge number. These people don't know that some of these crimes have 5 or 10 years. I have a brother, Roscoe Bickerstaff, and I don't bring it out because I know who the shooter is. And he's been dead 30 years. And not one time did I have called about my brother. Within 10 years, have they called me back about any information of what they're going to do? Now, I'm just telling you. So I know. So not only do I have a brother that was killed by police, I have a brother that was a victim of a homicide, okay? And it is unsolved. And I know, and I got the information in the person of the witness who know who murdered my brother. And they have not to this day said nothing. And I've been to the captain, Pillow, who was the lieutenant at the time. Then you got Mo Brown. None of these people have called me back. So I know where these people are coming from. I don't say too much about it. I'm not going to say the perpetrator's name because you have to be careful. You have to be careful with that. And I'm just being honest. So I understand where they're coming from.
Okay, thank you. So that's, Commissioner Adams?
Oh, no, I just wanted to say, Ms. Bickerstaff, I totally agree with what you're saying, and this is a little off the commission business, but my family is really going through the same thing, because as you know, my cousin lost one daughter to a police involved issue, but she also lost another daughter 2 years later to the homicide. We do not know who did that, and honestly, it's ripped us apart. Honestly, it's so incredibly devastating that we don't want to talk about it that much. But when we do, my cousin recently expressed that, like, it's difficult for her to even go outside at this point because she doesn't know who did it. So we do have to keep that in mind and think about those families that are currently going through that.
Okay, so Latanya just texted me, and I don't mean for you guys to take your money and fund the police department. Of course, I know that comes through the public safety budget, but maybe you need to talk to Kerry Howard and say, why isn't it enough homicide officers to solve these crimes?
So, thank you for sharing that information. I think that's definitely something, maybe we could target if a program comes to really cater or maybe provide supportive services. I'm not sure if that's out already, or maybe invite them to apply so we can help build capacity in that regard.
And also, we can build like other committees and have other projects on the side. So if somebody wants to get involved to kind of work with the city to just figure out what's going on with that, we can.
Commissioner Adams?
To the chair, I just wanted to, Ms. Bickerstaff's point, thinking about sort of these unsolved murders. I'm just looking at, we definitely are beholden to these 3 areas that are in the consent decree. But if we're thinking about, I think we can try to think about these categories as broadly as possible. They're just listed, and there are definitions to these things. But I do think that, and maybe we might have to get some legal consultation to make sure that we're in compliance with these categories. But my sense is that helping with these unsolved murders could fall under restorative justice in a way, right? So I just think that there may be a space there for us to help in that area and still be in compliance with the 3 categories that are listed, 115.
Commissioner Wong?
So I concur. I can't imagine that justice would be served without the truth, without knowing what happened, so that would be, I don't even think a strained interpretation of restorative justice, and also violence prevention. If we don't know who is perpetuating some of these actions, that certainly it makes the neighborhood less safe.
Commissioner Kennedy?
Completely agree. Ms. Bickerstaff, I'm really glad you brought this up because it's something I've been thinking about too. And I think that I also want to highlight your point about advocating around homicide detectives and what the need is there. I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to do that kind of work successfully, and I'm all ears for that.
Commissioner Pete?
Yeah, I just want to thank you for your statement. And I want to go back, I'm looking at the law, 115.5, and the first line under duties and authority of the commission is that the commission will respond to community needs and concerns regarding regulation of the police force and community police relations. So that's a pretty broad mandate there, even though, so it's including, but then it outlines a lot of things that don't necessarily relate to that, but it says
Right.
including but not limited to those things. So I think there is some broadness there in terms of our mission and mandate.
Commissioner Ferguson, do you have anything? I know you're on the phone, so I just wanted to check in.
Just in that, I'm glad that point was brought up about the unsolved murders and the fact that we'll be able to broadly interpret the law around those things to make sure that justice is served all around. And hopefully we can find community groups that will be able to help solve some of those things, especially when we think of restorative and transformative justice. There are models in other cities where they've had citizens do that work, because I don't think we want to give our money back to the police, but I do think that there's ways that we can empower our community to be their own advocates, to be their own change agents, to make a difference in their own community and get that justice, which is all about restorative justice. It's really the community taking that agency back. And I think as we go along and we learn about what other communities are doing to address these issues, I think we will be able to come up with unique ways to fund those types of organizations without having to rely so heavily on police, which is the other part of that Charter 115, is that we are also funding programs that kind of reduce the reliance on police, and that we're looking at mental health and domestic violence and all the other things that sometimes contribute to these murders. So I just think as we go along and do more research, we'll be able to really serve and help the community.
Okay. You have one point?
Yeah, to the chair, I just wanted just to build on everyone's points. We also, in the charter, we are supposed to advocate. We are supposed to come up with, there are going to be policies that we will discover that need to be in place. And those may have to be laws that have to be passed by the city council. It may be outside the scope, of our authority. So, we have the ability, as Commissioner Zayed said, like we can form ad hoc committees as we see fit. And also I would want to just throw out there that as we are currently, trying to use as many of our meetings as possible for training, because we have to finish a lot of training, but we may, thinking down the road, as we're thinking about our community meetings and sort of what we want, we could think about themes that we would like to bring to community meetings. And maybe one of the themes that we prioritize could be unsolved murders, unsolved crimes, and we can hear from the community. We can get the data from the community. We can draft up some advocacy, document or something that we can then go to the council and use the voice of the people and the data and the information they provide for us to fulfill that part of the charter. So I just want to put it out there that one part that we're talking about is how we can use our grant making ability to help with these unsolved murders. But I also think the other piece would then be, to Ms. Bickerstaff's point, as we talk to the safety director, Carrie Howard, and as we work with the police, what we may actually need to push for is some legislation on that.
Thank you. Ms. Bickerstaff?
Okay, so let me say this, and I understand what you're saying, Mr. Dr. Adams, I'm sorry. It's not even about pushing no legislation. They need to do their job. They need to get 15 more officers, promote them, do whatever, and get them in that unit to solve these murders, because there's no reason. My brother Roscoe's been dead almost 35 years. Okay, 35. So they wasn't even trying to find out who murdered him. Okay, years later, I became a private investigator, and I'm calling them about it. Okay, I had to take it upon myself. Now you have to understand, I'm limited as a private investigator what I can do, because I don't have prior law enforcement experience. You have some private investigators that do. I don't, and I don't want to conflict myself. And it's called chain of custody. Because if it goes to court, a good lawyer, and I work with a lot of great ones, can get the case thrown out. So you have to be careful, so you don't compromise anything and involve yourself in this. But at the end of the day, Dr. Adams, they know what they need to do. Okay, maybe as a group, I don't know how you guys would do it. Maybe you can get together and write them a letter, and they know how many homicides are unsolved. And ask them, what are they going to do about that? We have all these white shirts, high in number. So that's an issue right there too. You have a lot of people that are top brass. Okay, then you have the mayor who indicated that he was cutting, I don't think he's cutting the police officers, but I think it was some departments that wasn't being used. Am I correct when saying that, Jason? I think it was some departments he was cutting that wasn't being used. Vacant positions that weren't being used. Yeah, so, I'm just bringing that up, and that's just a suggestion, so.
Thank you so much for those points and great dialogue. We're gonna move forward. Is everybody clear on the budget from the city and where we're standing? Feel free to advocate, and we're waiting for that decision, and that may impact our grant process. But until then, we're gonna move diligently. We're gonna contribute all of our ideas. So the next item of business is to select our meeting time. I know.
I'm sorry, Chair. Are we gonna discuss the timeline of the grants? Are we gonna-
So we have like half of the form, and then in the next meeting, I'll send out, because we did program goals of the program for the year, number of grants and amounts, and then it will be funding, process, measurable outcomes, and timeline.
To the chair, we're looking at the week of the 13th, is that correct?
So I would recommend that we do it after the 15th, because we're having that grant training, and that might provide some ideas and feedback that we can bring back.
To the chair, on the master calendar, the 16th is open still, the Thursday, the 16th, as well as the 17th, the 20th, and the 21st.
To the chair, I cannot do the 17th, so maybe we should do the 16th if that works for everybody. Yeah.
To the chair, same for me.
The
I
16th?
can't do 17.
Yeah. No, we can do the 17th.
Sounds like the 16th.
16. Can we do it, can we have the meeting a little earlier?
Time doesn't.
I mean, does time matter to anybody else? No.
Actually,
Commissioner Ferguson, are you able to do 5 o'clock or 5:30? What we thinking? 5:30? 5?
I can't do 5:30 for any meetings because of work, just
So
saying.
6. So okay.
Okay.
Let's do 6 to 8. So next meeting.
I'll move that.
Oh,
You have that community meeting.
Yeah, I have a community meeting every Thursday from 6 to 7.
6 to 7.
But,
Do you want to do Monday?
I would prefer Monday.
mm,
No, Monday I have a meeting.
Monday the 20th.
Oh, what?
Oh, you mean the following Monday?
Yeah, I was gonna try,
Monday that was.
and that would give us more time to digest and maybe, because I know there was.
Monday, 13th, the rules committees meeting, 5 to 7.
I think we're talking about the 20th.
Oh, the 20th?
Oh,
Yeah, right, sorry, 20th. Okay.
16th.
I literally.
No, I
16th is
can't do
better.
the 20th. I could block.
what about? Okay, so it has to be the 16th, because I can't
So
do.
I'll do 20th. I have a
Well, I'm not available. They have a rules committee.
Oh, the rules committee, the rules committee is on the 13th,
The 13th.
but you
Oh.
usually we might have another meeting on the 20th.
Okay.
So.
If we do to the chair, if we do the 20th, I'm gonna have to call in. So I can be available. I'm just like physically not going to
I
be here.
can't do it at all.
So
So,
anything
And I
that
have a
we
meeting
do
on the
after
20th too.
the
Okay, I'll-
17th.
I also couldn't do the 20th or the 16th, just saying, sorry.
she said she can.
I cannot do the 16th or the 20th, I'll be out of town.
What's the other dates? 17th?
No.
No,
No.
17th.
Still possible.
The 21st is a Tuesday, it's also available.
I have a meeting.
The 21st works for me.
Yeah, somebody can.
I think we probably should do the 16th Well, that's right after the grants. Well, it'd be fresh.
Can't do 16. I actually can't do 16, I forgot.
You can or
I
cannot?
cannot. Because I have an alumni event that agreed to be at.
What about, so what did we say about the 20th?
20th,
I can do the 20th.
but that's pending if the rules committee doesn't have a meeting. We should-
That was the 13th.
Right, we usually have meetings on Monday.
To the
That's
chair,
the 13th. I mean, if it's not in the calendar, I think we're able to do it.
to the chair, are we,
No, I
are
can't do
we,
Monday because of Block Club either.
are we, are we, can we do something
The 21st.
before the 17th that week?
15th is the grant
Right.
writing. So I think we should do it after that so we can get that information.
But is the information gonna be contingent? We can still move forward and then just adapt.
To,
It's a-
which date are you inquiring about?
So the
Like-
15th is the grant writing. So I was thinking that obtaining that information would be helpful.
Yeah,
And then
I,
that way,
it would be, I believe you would answer a lot of your own questions after that. so-
yeah, so I think it should be after that.
Well,
So
keep in mind, you need a quorum. There are gonna be times where one or two commissioners miss meetings, you know,
Yeah.
if you're looking for 100% consensus every meeting, especially when you get in the summer, you can forget about it.
So it sounds like.
So do your best to get the most people possible on one of these
It
dates.
sounds like the
I think
16th.
the 20th. So there's like 3 people that can't make it on the 16th.
I can't do it.
You can't do what?
I cannot. And you can't meeting for 68 every.
I can, the only date I know that I can't is the 17th, because I'll be traveling.
And we can't do it after the
But
training.
once I'm where I'm going to be,
That'd probably be
I
too
can,
long.
Is it too
I
long?
can call
We'll
in.
argue till 8 at night.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let's go back to the
Thursday, there will
6th.
be 3 people missing. The 20th, there will be 2 people missing.
Is that counting me?
I
Because I just can't be physically present,
But
but
you
I
can
can
be,
call in, yeah.
yeah, call in. So there'll be 2, technically 2. And then the 21st,
21st is probably better
I can't.
for you.
I can do the
but
21st.
if you all can do it, yeah, go for
You
it.
can't?
How many people
How
on
many-
the 21st?
I can do the 21st.
you can't. So there'll still be 2 people on the
We
21st.
could maybe, should we do a doodle poll, or should we need to decide now?
It has to, I mean, I think there'll be more people missing on the 16th, so it should be the 20th or the 21st.
Yeah, do one of those.
The 21st works.
Well, then people will be missing.
The 20th would be better for me.
The 20th would be better.
I'll be
It would be
missing.
better. So for the 20th, it'd be Alana.
But you got
You
vacation
would be here
I
on
can be here.
20th.
If we do it earlier, I could,
at 5.
well, I could at least come to half the meeting. I can come.
Well, if Alana can't make the 20th, we could start earlier.
So.
Right. Like I could
How
start
early can people start on the 20th?
Like anytime for me. I wanna be done.
I would prefer early.
Yeah, I wouldn't wanna be, if I need to be at the other meeting at 6, so.
So we can start at 3 or 4.
Yeah, I can do it at 3. That or 4.
Monday.
I can do that.
Do you want 12 p.m. or?
No, that works. for me.
So we can aim for like 3 to 5
Yeah.
on the 20th. That's perfect.
Before dinner.
All right,
It's in the book.
it's in the books.
It's in the calendar. Okay. Is there any further questions, comments, or discussion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
I don't think we.
Well, not for this. So if there's no further business, the meeting will be adjourned. If there's no further business, the meeting will be adjourned at 7:40 p.m.
All right. Good job.